Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. I'm Kiran. I'm the host of today's session. I represent Lead Squad. I'm the country manager for Lead Squad Singapore. I have with me here Michael Clem and Rajesh Panda. Both are the speakers as part of today's session. Uh, what I will do as part of today's session is, I'll quickly introduce to you, the speakers, both Michael and Rajesh, in a moment, and then we can get started. The topic that we will cover today is future and accelerate enrollments in the digital era. Let me just start off by introducing Michael Clem over here. Michael Clem is an education professional with extensive experience in international education, education technology, and entrepreneurship. He's had stints at NTUC Learning Hub, the National University of Singapore, and Minerva University in several countries across Asia. He also sits on the board of several edtech startups and mentors edtech startups in accelerators like EduSpace and 500 Startups. Uh, he's founded and currently manages the Singapore Education Network. It was started back in Jan 2020, and is also a venture partner for higher education and edtech for the education consultancy EDT and Partners. He organizes this very interesting monthly meetup sessions called SEN networking sessions. So these are monthly in-person gatherings of education professionals from Singapore and abroad. So I recommend our audience to come and join the session when they're in Singapore. It's very interesting and engaging.
Thank you.
And yeah, thanks for that, Mike. Thanks for that, Michael. So I'll introduce Rajesh Panda. Rajesh Panda is a graduate from NIT Rourkela and is a gold medalist class of '96. Sorry to get your age out there, Rajesh.
Totally fine. Yeah.
So Rajesh has managed a business for HCL for several years before trying his hands at a few startups in Singapore. Rajesh is now the founder and the managing director of Corporate Gurukul Singapore. It's a company with a vision of enabling employability, social transformation, and integration through value-based education and skills training. Uh, they typically focus on industry-specific skills training for graduates across India, Singapore, Malaysia, China, and Australia. So thank you both Rajesh and Michael for the session. Both are looking sharp today. I don't know how you remain to stay young despite being in the education industry for quite some time now.
It's a young industry.
And it's a young industry, but
Yes.
the time in the industry also matters. Yeah. So let me just start off today's session by bringing out the first topic, which is the challenges in the digital era. Rajesh, we'll maybe start with you. I understand Corporate Gurukul has assessed, trained, and interned over 150,000 graduates on employability skills. Right. And I'm sure you can speak a word or two about enrollments and challenges institutions face in managing enrollments, especially in today's competitive market. Happy to hear from you on your thoughts on this.
Sure. Thanks so much. I mean, our roots are very much in Singapore, and then we moved to India, Middle East, and now almost 20 countries. So I'd share my experience of the entire process of, probably understanding students, because that's the starting point, and then enrolling them into the right programs, and then delivering an awesome experience, right, and learning outcomes. So from an understanding perspective, I would say that Asia has grown over the last decade in terms of their ambitions, and the affordability for world-class education has also grown big time. And which essentially means that when we go to students and parents, they obviously want nothing but the best. Right? While they want to get the best, they still want to build it for Asia in Asia, which is truly transformational. So that's how the audience has changed, and that's what they really need. And to do that, we of course partnered with two of the world's top universities, NUS, National University of Singapore, and NTU. And with them, we started offering internships. We started offering research and also immersions. So in short, I say we are into the T20 of cricket, right? There are test matches, there are one-day internationals, in education, but we are into the T20 space. So short-term internships, research, which helps them get world-class experiences and learning outcomes. At the same time, replicate these learning outcomes and these learnings in Asia, largely to solve Asia's problems, and that is truly appreciated by the university, at the same time by industry. Because finally, end of the day, in a Gurukul system, if you don't apply your learning to solve problems, it's of no use. Whether business problems or social problems. Now, coming to the admission process, I think, you know, largely if you want to give the best experience, all the stakeholders, the product has to be great. So all the stakeholders within the product have to be really nice, right from the faculty to the university certification, their learning experience, classrooms, hostels, everything has to be wonderful. And students check upon all of these factors before enrolling for any program, right? Who is the faculty from NUS or from NTU or from Hewlett Packard or Amazon, and what is their experience? What will they teach? What is it that I currently miss and that will create uh, more value to my profile when I really pitch for world-class jobs and other internships? So um, one is, the entire knowledge that they need to understand. And today, thanks to Lead Square and several other platforms, they go to these platforms to check out on us and our partners and our programs and say, okay, how do I enroll, right? And if whether it is worth enrolling, what is it? So that is where one, to reach out to these 20 countries to the right target audience, and second, give them that experience which will let them understand truly what is it that they want and will this program deliver what they want, is what we're delivering through the online platform. And once they come back and come for the actual program, the third part, and we deliver it, then you will see that there are definitely, and most of the students have reported, when I say most, almost 92% of students have reported that 80% of the learning was new, which is huge, right? Especially with our partners. And the current rating for our programs is almost 9.6 on 10 from a pure customer CSAT perspective, right? So there are a lot of referrals which we have, and mostly that is one of the primary channels for our admission process. So that really means that in education you have to deliver your promises, because the word spreads pretty fast, and unless you deliver on your promises, you can't last long in the business. And we are not in business; we are largely in education, if you see from a corporate guru perspective. So these are the three stages over the last 15 years of our existence across 20 countries, from a pure student understanding, admission process, and delivering a great experience perspective. Hope I was able to answer that question.
Well, that's fantastic, Rajesh, and a couple of points stood out from what you said was a 9.6 out of 10 CSAT is commendable, right? No doubt about it. And you're truly solving a problem at scale over here. It's coming out very clearly. So very interesting thoughts over there, Rajesh. So now moving on to Michael. Michael, so, given that you work with multiple stakeholders in the edtech industry and you're quite synonymous with the edtech industry, at least in parts of in APAC for sure, right? So, what do you think are the common problems that schools, universities, and edtechs face when trying to improve enrollment rates?
Well, I think, first of all, I would like to mention that when it comes to enrollment and admissions, we talk about actually two different parts. One is improving how admissions and enrollment actually works and has been managed and administered by universities and institutions. And that, of course, has seen quite a lot of different platforms and technical innovations to make it faster, cheaper, better. And then, of course, is the content part, right? The Coursera's, corporate Gurukul, and the edX and the emeritus part, where you actually talk about the delivery of the programs, right? So these things are quite separate, but both have faced in the last couple of years that big wall which is called digital transformation, which is more than just adding on different tools which are not interconnected. So transformation means as an organization, as a platform, as a company, as an institution, how do you connect the dots to make it more impactful, more customer or student friendly, but also better and easier to administer. And high cost of administration of, for example, enrollment and admissions is also what drives costs high. I just met, and sorry to go a little bit off track, but I think it's always good to come with a few anecdotes. I just met for lunch the vice dean of NUS Business School, the National University of Singapore Business School, and he's in charge of MBA programs. And so, and I asked him, how do you do market? And he's a marketing guru. His specialization is marketing. His name is Jochen Wirtz, in case you want to look at it.
Yeah.
So he said when he got into the job 3 years ago, he stopped pretty much most international travels. And also in terms of attending exhibitions, etc. So for him, it's all about digital admissions and enrollment. So of course, that's huge, different step. But then we have also, in terms of an internal process, we have, Lead Squared, but we have HubSpot, we have CL4, which is up and coming edtech portal or technology company based out of Singapore, who has made the process better for students, but also particularly cheaper and easier to administer for schools and universities. So those things have played a huge part, and I still believe we are just at the beginning to see the outcome, not only for brick and mortar institutions, but also for online education portals, which by and large started many years ago with the MOOCs, the Coursera's and edX, but actually really only the last few years really made a big splash as far as I'm concerned in terms of numbers, in terms of accessibility, and in terms of raising a bar, and particularly recognized as a equal kind of certification with a face-to-face session. So that's definitely one of those big outcomes of the pandemic.
Thanks for that, Michael, and very beautifully you got that demarcation between admissions and enrollments. That's a different perspective altogether. Thanks for that. So the next topic that I'd like to touch upon is understanding the learner. So Rajesh, you run a very learner-centric organization, and you're also a big advocate of experiential learning. Right. So, you can talk us through, what you hear from your learner base, what are they usually seeking? What are the choices that they make? How do you manage to serve them?
Thanks so much. I think that's a hot button for me always, because I come from a family of 7 teachers, including my mother.
Wow.
So learning has been there in the family. But let's say how corporate Gurukul defines learning is a 4-stage process: knowing, practicing, performing, and reflecting. Right? If you miss any of these stages, learning is incomplete. So largely in Asia, if we know, we said we have learned. So that's the first step. So if we know something, if we read something, if we have seen news, if we have gone to the library, if I have attended a lecture like this, I say, okay, I learned. So that's incorrect. So when we were in McKinsey and we were consulting some of the senior leaders, that's before corporate Gurukul, we figured out that most of the learning and value systems that they have picked up is in schools, and mostly schools and universities. Very less on job. So which essentially means that the real learning, which is the know, practice, perform, reflect, and those impressions really happen before 2025. And that stays with you, those learnings, those values stay with you for your life. I mean, you may have the skills, but finally you need somebody like a Virat Kohli to put together that determination, that focus, that never say die attitude. Nobody can teach you that. It happens through experiences, right? And you have to go through very tough experiences or very nice experiences or wonderful experiences, depending on what you want to make out of those experiences. So that's why I'm a very strong advocate of experiential learning, because it covers all those 4 stages of learning. You may practice very well in the nets. I mean, you can hit sixers after sixers in practice matches. In real matches, then you collapse, right? When you actually go from practice to perform, you may collapse. And once you collapse or if you hit 100, and let's say India-Pakistan match, if Kohli looks back and he says, okay, great, I did this, and the reflection is what did I do right and where can I possibly improve? So that's the experiential learning part. And COVID, of course, forced students to learn online. We did offer programs online, but once they knew that on campus is back, they just ran away from online and they said, okay, we want to be in Singapore, we want to be in NUS campus, we want to stay there, we want to meet the faculty, shake hands, hug with them, work with my teammates, go and party with my teammates in the evenings, do all kinds of things, right? So Singapore as a city is a great destination for experience because it's very multicultural. NUS as a world-class campus with world-class faculty and facilities is a great destination for that experience. And if we are really saying, if you see our real focus, it's about good to great. We believe everybody is good. How do we embark them on a journey to greatness? So giving powerful experiences is one of the key attributes of transforming them in or making a slight dent in their journey towards greatness, right? So that's what we are really focusing on, and that is what our students feel uh, before COVID and also post-COVID about experiential learning. I mean, they really love it. I mean, some part you can always deliver online as an hybrid mode, that is always there, but they want to be there on ground.
No, that's a very well put analogy, and you brought in Virat Kohli, so nobody can forget what experiential learning is, right? With this kind of an analogy, very interesting to hear that from you, Rajesh. Uh, Michael, you organize a monthly networking session for institutional leaders in the edtech space or education space, rather. I've been a regular at these events, and people, most often talk about experiential learning in these events. I've seen them, right? Can you tell us how technology is being adopted to understand the learner, right? It's very important to change the way students learn and apply the same in real life. So, how does technology play the role to understand the learner over here?
Thanks for question. It's a very good question. I probably draw on my experience when I was in education institutions. And what Rajesh always refers to a cricket game to illustrate, right? So as a German, I should try to play with a football game, even though I'm probably not as innovative or imaginative as Rajesh to come up with something quick. But experiential learning and technology for most people is not a straight match, right? Because for most people, experiential learning is something brick and mortar is touch, and I agree to some degree that a lot of experiential learning should be outside the classroom, right? But technology plays, as far as I'm concerned, right, and I'm sure different people have different opinions about it. Technology plays an important role in different aspects. I mean, number one, for example, for me is assessing a person a skill set. And again, education also, and one of the key, I would say, key, hopefully, developments in the future is how to make education more individualized, right? So it's not like one size fits all, so that students have more options in what they learn. It's a bit of noise here. And on what they learn and at what pace, and where can technology can help, in particular in this context, is assessing students' capabilities, competencies, and skill sets, right? And then they are placed, or technology can help in that type of assessment, and then recommend certain courses, modules, and certain types of experiences. I think that's number one. Secondly, I think their technology is also very, very useful. I'm not sure if it's experiential in that sense, but is in language learning, right? So
Right.
language learning, their technology, speech recognition, just as a just to throw this keyword here into the discussion, speech recognition, or measuring fluency, grammar, etc. In that context, of course, it's always nice to have conversational English or conversation, any kind of language. You use conversations to improve. your skill set. But in language learning, I think technology has made a huge difference, and there are a lot of interesting new innovations coming out to not exactly replace a conversation, but to spot mistakes, to also, of course, give good feedback. And but this is just one area where I think technology can play a huge role. Boot camps, it's another area. Boot camps for particular skill sets. I mean, boot camps usually in person, but there's a lot of tech skills taught in those boot camps. So it's 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, I don't know, a very short but very high intensity course, which has become very popular in many countries to replace a kind of formalized setting for education. And that type of combination of technology skills, as well as face-to-face learning, I think is here to stay as almost like I wouldn't say alternative education segment, but as very complementary.
No, it's very insightful, Michael. Very insightful and a very different thought process. I'd like to move on to the next topic that I wanted to cover as part of today's session, which is driving enrollment rates. How do we drive enrollment rates within organization, and that's where something like a product like a Lead Squared comes in, right? So we help drive enrollments. We help drive enrollments by building a dedicated application portal, or a complete paperless application portal, through an omni-channel kind of a marketing campaign, prioritizing inquiries based on the students' interests, running automations, and so on. So all this typically will result in additional sign up or registration, directly impacting the top line of businesses. Rajesh, maybe we can start with you and then move to Michael. I'd like to hear from you on how Corporate Gurukul is creating a completely digital enrollment experience, the process, the tools in place, what is planned and what is not, and what has helped increase enrollments for you at Corporate Gurukul. Any strategies, technologies, automations, productivity hacks that you can share with us?
Sure. I think fundamentally, if you see the difference between sales and marketing, sales is about push and marketing is about the pull. So we are using Lead Square for both, right? Both for the push and the pull. Obviously, for the push, we leverage on various channels, including online digital channels, um, emails, um, on ground, um, you know, pamphlets, so on and so forth, that the sales team uses. For marketing, we obviously create the pull, which is the Google ads and stuff like that. But once a student, or what we call a customer, lands on the landing page, what do they seek? Right? I can get people to land on my landing page from a Facebook or a Insta or a LinkedIn. But finally, the real thing is, will they like the program and will they enroll? Now that experience has to be seamless, which means that first we understand what, like I told before, we need to understand what the student really wants and what is our product going to do, how is it going to solve a particular problem for the child, right? And if my marketing or the copyright is essentially essentially saying what the student wants, and we are able to deliver it seamlessly as well, then it's a complete loop which is there. Now, in this process, there is customization, right? When a student lands on my page, uh, it's not one size fits all. There is somebody who's in the first year of engineering, somebody in the second year, somebody's in the third year, somebody's in aerospace engineering, somebody's a computer science engineer, pursuing their undergrad or postgrad. So we need to capture those details. And once we capture those details, the system essentially understands better. And what Lead Square has helped us is largely in pushing out this customized messaging and follow ups that we understand are the child's need or the customer's need,
Right.
right? So, understanding and then sort of communicating back, which in a human centric approach was very tough, right? You can't be asking a counselor to ask 10 questions to every candidate. It's just a waste of her time or his time. So that has brought a lot of focus, effectiveness, and productivity in the system, right? And that has been a pretty seamless experience, I would say.
Thanks for that, Rajesh. We continue to innovate in this sector, and we are long on education. We
Right.
continue to make strides over here, and always learn new processes, new workflows, new practices, hygiene from industry veterans and companies, innovative companies like yourself. So
Right.
the lean startup is typically adopted extensively in the education sector, and we need customers like yourself to give us more inputs on how we can better our product and sort of solve for the
Yeah,
future.
absolutely. You have a good B2B product as well. I didn't speak about that, but yeah, when we work with um, institutional, so we call them institutions, which is schools and universities. I think the product also addresses what the professors or the vice chancellors or the directors of schools or principals they need. So I would say we have used other CRMs earlier, and this has been a good shift,
Thanks for
right?
that, Raj. Yeah, thanks for that. Michael, over to you. Given your experience, in the industry, in the education industry, working working in leadership across different edtech organizations, and now sitting in the boards of startups, how do you think technology is being adapted rather, in driving enrollments across the industry? You can throw some light on this topic. Maybe give us some examples and cases of startups that have thrived by adopting technologies, for enrollments, and your thoughts from an advisor perspective would definitely give a light to all of us.
Yeah, thanks for a question. I think it's in again. I think on the topic of area
Right.
or the topic of enrollment and admissions.
Exactly.
I think Lead Squared has definitely made the mark as a very supportive tech tool. Um, it wouldn't fit everyone, and that's perfectly fine. But your suite of products and what Rajesh was sharing, I think that has definitely improved and increased efficiency and of course outcome. But generally speaking, across the board, I think a lot of institutions don't use technology for admissions and enrollment as much as they should. Um, I think a lot of institutions, and I talk to teachers or school management as well as training institutes or universities. Many of them are just overwhelmed, simply speaking. In the last 2 years, there is just an abundance of different tech tools coming to the market, which is good because COVID, in a sense, everything removed remotely, and teaching remotely is just one part. It's an important part, but it's definitely not the only one part in terms of digital transformation. But it kind of lifted education technology a bit out of darkness, literally on the front page of many newspapers, because parents get involved, teachers get involved, politicians, etc. Education, by and large, is it's it's a it's a crucially important aspect, literally, for an economy at large. So, and I think to give a statement about the adoption of a stage of adoption of technology is just too wide. I think you need to look probably a little bit into countries. Number one, I wouldn't say regions, because when you say Southeast Asia, then Singapore definitely stands
Yeah.
out, but not only Singapore. And then also looking into different education segments. I think higher education is quite different from K-12. And K-12, you have public and private schools who are run very differently, who have very different budgets, and public schools by definitions are managed, or to a large degree managed, by ministries or definitely public agencies. It always takes longer to adopt technology. The process in terms of procurement is just a lot more tedious. Then education systems come into the picture, right? And different countries have different data security or um, data or student data regulations and rules. I kind of throw questions here just on the table here, and I'm sure Rajesh knows that very well. These are all things which can hamper adoption of technology. Europe, for example, you may think technology in Europe is very far advanced, but when it comes to public schools, you will actually be surprised. In many advanced countries in Europe and Western Europe, public schools use relatively little technology as far as classroom and as far as admissions, enrollment, and those things are concerned. Public schools, they don't really care much about admission enrollment. Students come anyway, right? So the pressure is more for international schools. Of course, there's also more money involved. International schools have pivoted or largely adopt or to a good degree adopted different solutions to make enrollment faster, more accessible, of course, and then also more sustainable in terms of less paper, right? As simple as that. I think that all plays a role also in the overarching goal of being a sustainable school. Universities, again, public and private is quite different. When we look at, let's say, Southeast Asia, then many products have struggled to break into the higher education sector, especially public, because they only have an English language product, right? So that is one of the key obstacles in moving into Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand. It's very, very hard. So higher education and then using admissions and enrollment solutions, it's largely confined to the English-speaking countries, and we got Singapore, India, of course, is a whole different ballgame. But we get Singapore, we get Malaysia, we get a bit of Philippines, and then all the international branch campuses or the English-speaking, let's say, business schools, for example, right? So that's still a market, but overall, it's actually quite a small market. So when I talk to companies, I always encourage them localize. Localization is not language only, but it should be the start. And then it's difficult to translate everything at once. So look at your key markets. Indonesia is often mentioned. Vietnam is often mentioned when it comes to Southeast Asia, maybe Philippines, maybe Malaysia. So those types of localization, language, but then also admissions process, the different types of paperwork which is required, the different modules or gradings, assessments, all these things needs to be customized to different education system, particularly when the public education market is concerned. So in that context, I think there's still a long way to go for better and more utilization of digital tools.
So that's very insightful, Michael, especially giving us a landscape of how technologies are adapted across different countries or even regions, right? And the inconsistencies in adopting technologies across emerging markets and developed markets. But one thing is for sure, and one thing that I infer from what you're saying is digital adoption is the only way forward, right? So next up, I want to talk about a bit about personalization. We see a lot of institutions today, edtech institutions today, or even education companies, or colleges, universities, still practice antiquated enrollment methods. But at Lead Square, we help these institutes provide a very personalized, student experience at scale. Today, the choices that students have, be it courses, institutions, infrastructure, alumni, etc., is just tremendous. The idea behind our platform, that is Lead Squared, is that if there is an inquiry that comes in, we work on the philosophy of how do you engage, enroll, and retain a prospect and make them a student or a learner, right? And given the university option student have these days, it's just not enough for university schools or edtechs to just differentiate on the content or faculty or infrastructure, but also in a very personalized enrollment process, right? And this is to increase your inquiries to conversions, right? And this is where a personalization would come into the picture. And Michael, I'll start with you this time. You tell us about the various strategies, maybe culture, from a process perspective, or even from a technology tool perspective, to enable personalized conversations with students, right? So personalization is kind of the way forward, and personalization at scale is kind of the way forward for us, at Lead Squared. So you can give your thoughts on this.
Are you, sorry to
Yeah.
rephrase again, are you looking for personalization as part of admissions enrollment process or in general, which is a much bigger topic? And
In
I think,
general, in general.
um, well, personalization, I was involved in a report maybe 6 months ago about the future of higher education, but many topics or segments are similar also to general education. And we came up with five different key developments which will likely shape education, and one was personalization. It's for many people it's hard kind of to define or imagine or describe what does it actually mean, and it means many different things for different people. So let me just pick on a couple of things. Well, first of all, why is personalization actually important, or why is there actually need to it? Well, when you look at education in general, it's often one size fits all. That's what we mentioned, right? You do
True.
your A level or your high school, or you do 12 years, and then you have a 3 year degree, or maybe you do a master's, you have 4 years. There's always a certain fixed number of courses and modules and hours you need to attend. What it doesn't take into account at all is what you already know as a young person, as a student, how fast you learn, which is which is critical. Um, um, and so and these are two things it's very difficult to do and also then to operationalize. So that's just a concept behind, right? So it different to use, and then it would be a very big game changer for traditional institutions, because first semester goes to module whatever science, ABC or 101, and then you go da 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 da, right? So everybody does exactly the same journey, which doesn't actually cater to people who take longer to learn and who are just faster to learn. And then particularly, and in this age, it becomes more important, students who already learn things. And a typical example is um, when I work or I visit, I talk to teachers in high schools. A lot of students, particularly in tech, but not only in the tech space, they do
Mhm.
all kinds of different certificates and courses, right? It could be boot camp. They do different IT skills, coding, programming. They go to universities where start from zero. None of these things are usually recognized. And I asked a question in a recent in Singapore, and I was the president of the Singapore Management University, and I asked, would you ever recognize a certain certificate which is not issued by your organization, and you can skip a certain module? The answer was no. It was rephrased, but the answer was no, because you lose control, right? You lose money, you lose control, and suddenly you leave a university after 2 years with the same degree like somebody else with 3 years, which sounds unjustified, but it's actually very justified if the system is solid, right? So it's all easy for me to say because would be huge ramifications across the board. But when we look at education as something which we should make more accessible, less cost intensive, and prepare students for the job market. And maybe it should be 3 years a bachelor, but then you learn other things, right? And not something which has been dictated to you. It would make students a lot more employable. So that type of personalization is very little. I wouldn't say zero. I wouldn't know, to be honest, but in some areas it might be recognized, but very few universities allow that. And I would hope there are more and more technologies also adopted who can cater. You could call it adaptive learning, for example, right? There is um, I forgot, it's a well-known company. I come back to you, who has a system which essentially constantly measures or evaluates the skill level of students and accordingly recommends certain modules. And when you're good at something, you can skip, right? So again, there's a lot of technology involved, and well, the human factor is still important. It's easy to say how it should work conceptually, but it needs to be foolproof, because again, education is about money, it's about time, it's about controlling brands and controlling also credibility, which is critical for any education institution. So, but I can definitely see further development on that part.
This is a very interesting take on personalization in education, Michael, and thanks for that. Rajesh, how much of personalization is adopted at corporate Gurukul, especially given that you have thousands of students enrolling for your school and university programs?
Yeah. Michael, very good perspective. In fact, I'll build on what Michael said. Thanks so much for that question, Kiran. So I'll look at personalization as a whole in the industry, and then look at how enrollments can happen and how personalized enrollments can be effective. So personalization at scale currently doesn't exist in the education system, right? Even in my MBA, I think, in fact, everybody reads Kotler, right? And they have to go through
Yeah.
quotas and pictures of the world. So there is obviously no personalization to the Asian concepts or the Asian case studies. So even at a business school at the highest level, I think we didn't go through it. So forget about at the bottom of the pyramid. So when you have the same curriculum for everybody, it doesn't serve the purpose. So how did we bring personalization in corporate Gurukul? Through a concept which you may find very dangerous, but yeah. So we said in all our exams, we have a question paper. Everybody answers the same question. So answering is very easy. But how about we empower the students to define the question? And that's actually live. So we said, let's learn this life skill in your subject. So what we did, whether the programs that we run in schools for AI or for design thinking, which is research, students have to define their own question, their problem. And comes as a shock to most students because they say, oh, yeah, this is your question paper. Your question paper is there is no question. You write your own question. And then NUS professors and NTU professors or HP professionals, they will evaluate you based on the kind of question that you evolve for yourself, right? So every question that a child, everything that a child is passionate about, everything the child finds purposeful, there are various problems they can identify. Um, all those things they can essentially sort of put together and say, okay, what's that question that I want to define for myself and work through this entire experience. Obviously, there are lectures, but each lecture, so this is session one, and obviously the further sessions are customized. The child sort of works with a teaching associate to work on a project which is customized based on this. So knowledge is equally available for everyone, but how they use that knowledge for personalization and apply it in a project or in a scenario which they are passionate about is what we are driving in corporate Gurukul from purely a personalization perspective. So they are finally assessed based on the kind of question they define for themselves and what's the answer they write to that. You can't define a very tough question and say, oh, I don't know this answer, right? So you have to define a powerful question which is in line with your purpose and passion, if you think you have a passion, or anything that interests you, and then you solve it. Now, if I have to admit somebody into my programs, by explaining this, it is going to be tough, right? So, how do you transfer this into a digital experience, right? So we ask questions. In fact, it is very similar to SOPs that students submit to universities in US or Europe. These are statements of purpose, right? So we ask students, hey, what do you want to do in life? Very tough question for a grade 8 student, grade 9 student. He says, forget life, I'm enjoying my life here. But at least it's thoughtful. It is a starting point and they're right there. And this is part of the admission process. So there are separate sections. Basically, we're using LeadSquare for this. There are separate sections which we have designed where students can put in their choices, their subject area of interest, their career interests that are there. Whether they're right or wrong is debatable. What is the kind of real world problems they want to solve? So they enter all of these, based on which then we do a counseling session, an interview. Then we also interact with their parents and say, hey, your child has written this. Do you think this is good to go? What do you think? Right? So on the digital platform, we take all their inputs, which is purely personalized to who they are, their passion, their interest, the kind of problem they want to work on, and what they want to do to make an impact in the world. The second is then confirm that with their parents and possibly their teachers, and then they're admitted to the program.
It's a very interesting take on personalization, Rajesh, and very interesting process that you're adopting in corporate Gurukul. Now, with that, we'll move to the last topic that I wanted to cover today, and then we'll leave it out for questions. We'll talk about the changing landscape. While learning at its core has not changed, the way one learns has changed over the years. Now, especially since we are in the post-COVID era, no matter the mode of delivery, technology has certainly helped sort of marketing, sales, onboarding, and retaining learners. So I'll start with Rajesh. You're a big believer in the offline model, right? Even in today's changing new world order of e-learning. Could you share how you think offline and online models, can coexist and complement based on your experience with corporate Gurukul?
Yeah, we are using online for knowledge, but for skills, you can't develop it online. You have to be there, get that thing done. You can't tell somebody, okay, this is how you fix a car. When he finally goes to fix a car, he's going to have his challenges. So, yeah, I mean, there definitely knowledge can be imparted online, which is largely the seeing, learning, reading. You can do it online. But the skills and the bigger part is the attitude and the value systems that has to be experiential, and that is offline 100%. You can't really teach somebody values online because values are not taught, they are caught. And they're caught when they live in a surrounding, they look at their parents, they look at their teachers, they look at their peers, they look at the society, they live in it, and that's how they develop those values, attitudes. So it's a pretty powerful experiential, I would say, component which you cannot deliver online. So that's how we are
Fantastic.
separate knowledge online, skills and attitude and values um, offline.
Very interesting take, Rajesh, on how these models coexist, how both offline and online models coexist. Now, Michael, we'll wrap it with you. We are living today in the post-COVID era. How do you see technology? How do you see technology evolve in the education industry? And what are some of the new emerging trends that have arisen post the COVID era?
Thanks, Karen. If you don't mind, I want to add on something to your previous
Absolutely.
question, and I agree with what you were saying that virtual swimming lesson doesn't cut it, right? So it's just it's not wet enough, right? So skills based are certain things you definitely need in person one. And what I personally use as professional development is joining certain communities. That's one of the reasons why my organization, the Singapore Education Network, we have monthly networking sessions where you meet people and you talk to people who you wish to talk to for as long as you talk to, and that's essentially you get to know somebody else's strategy, job scope, the struggles, etc. And this is how you learn, right? So this is often how you. It's rather less structured. It's very human centric, and it doesn't have to have a big overarching umbrella. I am in a professional development course, right? Actually, learning can be anywhere. You just need to be ready and have always open eyes and open ears, right? Sorry, I just wanted to add that on, and
Yeah, sure,
what
Michael.
I said, right? Raj's statements and sharing, I fully agree with. For generally talking about digital transformation, I mean, I touched on quite a few things already. I mean, in the personalization of education is one thing. I think we will see also, generally speaking, a large overhaul about the topic of assessment. It could be how to do remote assessments, proctoring, how to essentially assess or grade students. Number one, they are not in the classroom, but also to make sure cheating does not appear, or at least it will be avoided as much as possible. One of the other, and I would say, great innovations which solves a very pinpoint problem comes with using digital credentials. So in other words, if some of the listeners don't know what I'm referring to, if issuing certificates, degrees, any kind of educational credential in a digital format, preferably maybe blockchain based, which means it's always with you. It cannot be faked. It's easy transferable, and of course, it's verifiable. And that advantage is useful across all different education segments. It's very for skills, particularly for people who work in different countries. You got a skill certificate for being a nurse or a mechanic, and now you work in another country. So people know that you really achieved and earned that skill certificate, but of course it's also for degrees and other certificates. So digital credentials, I think that has already arrived to a good degree, but I think it still goes a long way when you have an e-wallet or you have some kind of online virtual wallet where you over time, over the course of your life, pretty much, you accumulate different skills and experiences. So batches, for example, as well. I can see it in university and schools that they don't only certify that you got an ABC, whatever, in certain modules and subjects. They also certify you've been a captain for a football team for 2 years, which is proof, at least to some degree, that you have a hobby which is physically demanding, and you also have some leadership skills, and I guess you have been also a little bit popular, at least with the coach of the other teammates. But all these things add on to a person's personality and then employability, I believe.
Right.
So that's another area where I think will make a great splash or growth. And last but not least, and I touched base that previously, that young and old, we will probably need more and more short-term, very skills-based courses or skill sets which we accumulate, and then to stay relevant within our own job or when we move jobs. So that I don't know. I don't think it replaces degrees, but it can complement degrees to a large degree. And in certain sectors, those skills-based certificates could make somebody more employable than a big chunk 2-year MBA, right? So and I believe with more industry push, because at the end of the day, large changes will usually only happen with a big push from either students, but the students need to have alternatives, and the students don't have alternatives. I mean, not much to, at least now, but from the industry, when we say we cannot employ or we need people with certain skill sets, and we need to be verifiable, and we need to make sure that person knows how to program, for example, right? Or completely different thing, has data analytics skills. I don't need a computer science degree. I just need data analytics, and how to operate Salesforce and other platforms, for example, and that is good for somebody to be employed. So that has again implications. Hiring process. Public sector is a huge hirer. They don't move very fast. The distinction, which is often made in countries between, okay, degree holders go to the right, skilled certificates, polytechnic, whatever, go to the left. Okay, so I hope that will change, and I'm talking in the sense when it comes to processes, right? That
Right.
is, it has changed to in some countries or in some companies, but not to a large degree. I really hope education can push that, and then we need to work very closely with the industry. So that's what I would hope will happen.
Yeah.
Well, certainly, Michael, and we look forward to seeing some of these technologies evolve over the years and come to fruition very soon for mass adoption. With that, we'll leave the forum open for any questions. Shibani, if you have any questions from the audience, we can have it on the chat.
One, I don't see any questions coming in right now. But if you all have any questions, and this is to the audience, please post them now because we will conclude the session very soon. Very interesting discussion, though, Rajesh and Michael. Thank you so much for sharing those.
Yeah, thank you so
My
much.
pleasure.
Pleasure is ours.
Yeah. We will also create a post out of this and share this with everyone who has joined in. So in case you missed anything to the audience, you can go back and read that article. It has all the expert tips that Rajesh and Michael just shared. Yeah, that's it. And of course, if you want to get in touch with any of the speakers, please do reach out to us as well, and we will put you in touch.
Yeah, if they have any questions or anything they want to discuss, happy to address that offline.
Yeah, sure. I think we're good though, Kiran.
All right. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you, Rajesh, for the session. Very insightful. I've learned a lot through this, and look forward to many more such sessions with you.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone, Michael and Kiran. Take
Thanks,
care.
Kiran. Thanks, Rajesh, and everyone. Hope to
Thank
catch
you,
up
everyone,
one
for
day.
tuning in. Bye.
Bye-bye. See you.